a bank. And I just thought, he understands. He gets it. Ted became a board member of the Alberts Company at age 25. And in his first meeting, he began his life's work.
Board minutes, 1963. Mr. Ted Albert said he would like the company to begin to produce records and to explore the idea of an Australian sound of popular music.
There wasn't much to explore in 1963. Our parents' taste in music had never been so bad. But somehow, Ted saw the change that was coming. What he didn't know was that same year a family had arrived in Sydney with a new sound in its blood. And their stories were about to intertwine. They came from the working class streets of Glasgow. Three of the greatest guitarists and songwriters in music history from the one family, George, Malcolm, and Angus Young. They hailed from the post-war scheme of Cranhill. It was a tough place to grow up. But the Youngs never forgot where they came from.
You've got to remember at this time, Glasgow has the coal industry, it has the shipyards, the air is thick and black, and it's into this atmosphere that the Young family kind of thrives in many ways because they're tough. And there's a lot of them. You know, there really is that clan mentality. Blood is everything.
William and Margaret Young put 8 children onto those mean streets. Music ran in the blood.
The whole family musical. Their family was like my family in Liverpool. I'm from one of 10. 6 sisters and 4 brothers. The youngest are from, I think, 1 of 50. They're terrible. There's people everywhere. You didn't know which one was the young.
For the youngest of the Youngs, Angus, it meant he had plenty of music teachers.
Each brother I had kind of would show you a little bits of, you know, music or what they liked. And even my oldest brother, Stevie, was trying to put me behind a piano, trying to show. No, you do it like this with these fingers. You play this way.
The big freeze of 1963 was the worst winter on record. The snow was 8 feet deep. At the same time, an ad appeared on the telly offering a different life.
Come over to the sunny side now. Australia, a great place for families.
Australia was being sold to the British public as a paradise. They've never had snow in Australia. It never rains in Australia. You have Christmas Day on the beach.
You could be on your way to a sunnier future in the new year.
The ad tipped the balance. The Youngs opted for Australia. The Cranhill School yearbook records the day they left. 15 of the Youngs left Scotland, bound for Botany Bay. 7-year-old Angus promptly vomited on arrival.
So we gets off the plane in Sydney, I looked around and I said to my wife, there's not a soul in this country knows me. It's a wee baby, no friends, no one.
Drummer Snowy Fleet arrived from Liverpool with his wife and daughter around the same time.
Got on the bus and my missus going, oh look, the palm trees, that'd be nice, you know, and all, it was all beautiful. But as we drove out of the city and we started to get in the bush, we didn't know where we were. And all I could hear were all these things making noises, crickets and God knows what. I thought, we're in the jungle. And it was that bad.
The Young family were wondering why they'd left their beloved Scotland. Sydney rained for 6 solid weeks after the Youngs arrived. They would wait to find snakes in their dry bedding, escaping the wet floor of their new home.
It's been suggested that bad weather makes people moody and irritable. But is that an excuse for a punch-up?
By day, the Aussies came round looking for a fight. When he wasn't scrapping with the locals, the fifth son, 16-year-old George Young, was playing music in the hostel's wash house. He met a brilliant lead guitarist from Holland, whose name he couldn't pronounce. Johannes Vandenberg became Harry Vander, thanks to George. The Australia they'd landed in was primed for rebellion. In 1963, a third of the country was under 20. Kids everywhere were ready to explode.
I can't get no satisfaction.
All they needed was a soundtrack.
I think the adults criticise us all the time, and they forget that once they were young, they like to do crazy things too. They just criticise that because they're trying to have a bit of fun.
Albert's was the last company you'd expect to deliver the soundtrack of a generation. The company founder, Jacques Albert, hailed from Fribourg, Switzerland, a civilised, tidy town. Oddly quiet, this birthplace of a rock and roll dynasty. Jacques had emigrated to Sydney with nothing but his young family and the clothes on his back. His young wife died, but J. Albert and son went on to flourish. Almost a century later, the company headquarters still felt a little old school. FIFA Riccobono was just 16 when she started as a secretary. One day, she would run the company.
All of this was so alien to me, and they had all these beautiful old paintings of like Frank Albert and his father Jacques, the founder, and they used to just be behind you in the accounts department, and they'd be just staring at you. And it was this really eerie feeling that you were being looked at.
Behind the decor, Ted Albert was plotting revolution, and he now had a green light from the board. The company would sign artists, write and produce records aimed at capturing the new rock and roll audience. It was Ted's chance to put his stamp on the old firm.
Quite amazing when you think that the biggest selling things when Ted took over was the Boomerang Songbook and the harmonicas, you know, and here we are with the Beatles and everything else going on around you. Who the hell wants a songbook and a harmonica?
When I get up in the morning, get trouble done, eat now.
Ted's first signing was Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs, who took their manager's mum along to help clinch the deal.
In those days, you didn't really understand the way it worked. You just wanted to be a pop star. You wanted girls to scream at you when you went out. You wanted to be famous, and you wanted the #1 hit record. That's it. Whoever could bring you that, yeah, I'll sign that.
When the Beatles toured Australia in 1964, Thorpe and the Aztecs kept the Beatles from the #1 spot in the charts, an unimagined feat for an Australian band. They were still dressing British while sounding American, but change was on the way.
Ted did just have this uncanny knack for picking a hit. He listened to a lot of the music coming out of overseas, so he was very keyed into what was happening.
Out on the edge of suburbia, the sound Ted was searching for was coming together. George and Harry had found a baby-faced singer who had a gift for a catchy lyric. Now all they needed was a drummer.
He put a note on the door that said, if in Liverpool, I believe you play the drums. They played me the music that they was used to. I said, how about some of the stuff I was listening to in Liverpool? I brought all my records out. And George went, yes. He loved the beat, George.
They called themselves the Easy Beats. And within months, they were playing big gigs like Surf City and King's Cross.
Thank you. Hello.
That's our manager.
Oh, yes.
They hired a real estate agent for a manager in 1964. Mike Vaughan had one priceless connection.
We've just made ourselves a good deal.
He knew Ted Albert. The Easy Beats were invited down to Radio 2 UW Theatre to audition for Mr. Albert.
We were told to be on our best behaviour because this was a gentleman that was coming to see us. Not the sort of bloke that you swear in front of, you know what I mean? Well, not at least the first meeting, you know? And for us it was like a proper performance in front of Ted. I mean, everything hung on it as far as we were concerned, you know?
It was the meeting of two clans, for the Youngs and the Alberts.
Ted was down on his hands and knees tinkering with microphones and just doing all sorts of things, playing with the music, and George really clocked that.
A close bond began that day, forged over music.
He was a man who had a very extraordinary understanding of sound and how it worked. And I think all the way back then, that relationship between Ted and the Easy Beats is really born.
The fuse was lit for some of the greatest music Australia would ever produce, written and performed by 16-year-old kids.
Number one in riffs that you can't play without a cheeky smile on your face. Even when you play it wrong.
She's So Fine had all the ingredients of the new Australian sound. A formula that would define the Easy Beats and reach its zenith in ACDC. A killer riff that hooked you from the start. A guitarist who could summon the heavens. And a singer who discharged a casual air of rebellion.
You look at the singer performer like that and think, he's having infinitely more fun than anyone else, and I want to be that guy.
It was the soundtrack young Australia had been waiting for. Easy Fever began.
We got a show in Perth. We had 8,000 kids at the airport. And it was like that in my mum. Where we went in Australia, hotels, you go into your hotel after the show, you open the cupboard door and 6 chicks would fall out. And it was all of that. Stephen had someone posted herself to Stephen in a box.
Yeah, they've got real good sound. I think they're fantastic. Oh, I simply adore little Stevie. He's only 17, they write their own records. Yeah. Oh, the most fantastic group in Australia, I think.
How do they compare to the Beatles?
Oh, they're better, but
Glorious. Whoa. Take a look at that.
Wednesday night's got the ultimate lifestyle lineup.
What's not to like about it?
With brand new Gogglebox.
Should I go and get the whip?
Oh, goosebumps.
New episodes of Grand Designs Australia.
That is stunning.
And all new Grand Designs The Street.
There is no street like this in the rest of the country.
That's great.
Wednesday nights never looked so good. On Lifestyle.
Australia became their oyster. There was a special chemistry at work. A band who could ignite the fire, teamed with a producer who could fan the flames. Ted Albert was convinced Australian music sounded too soft, and he produced the Easy Beats loud.
He said, I want to play you something, can you tell me honestly what you think about it? and the song came out through these huge speakers. The whole office shook. And he said, what do you think? I said, Ted, you and I both know that we've just listened to an absolute certain #1 hit record. And this big smile came out of his face, and it was Sorry by the Easy Beats.
Sorry was the first Australian single recorded with feedback before the Beatles or the Stones. Fame chased them. A magazine had published where the young family lived in Burwood, causing a house invasion.
They trampled youngster Malcolm trying to get at George.
When 10-year-old Angus came home, it was mayhem.
I just saw all these people. I saw police because they kind of barricaded it off. And I tried to explain to a policeman, I'm saying, you know, I live there, can I get my house? And the policeman said, yeah, they're all saying that, fella. You know?
Only a year out of Villawood Migrant Hostel, their lives had been transformed. The Easy Beats were ready to take on the world. Ted agreed to back them. He sent Easy Beats manager Mike Vaughan to New York to score a worldwide record deal. Mike stayed with Aussie journalist Lillian Roxon, who fell in love with the Easy Beats and with Mike's mission.
The suspense is killing me. Will this simple, unspoiled young man from Strathfield, New South Wales win the biggest deal in Australian showbiz history and become the new Brian Epstein? Will the Easy Beats show the Yanks what music really is? Or will they fade away into obscurity in North Cunnamulla?
On the last day of the trip, Mike Vaughan signed a contract with United Artists. The Easy Beats would record at the legendary Abbey Road Studios in London. Ted Albert would produce. The boys had a ticket to ride. They were poised on the edge of greatness.
In the pop business, particularly in the 60s, the Holy Grail was to make it swing in London. And of course, George being as he is, a leader of the group, and this incredible desire to always go further, that's where we're going to go.
They left Australia as heroes, vowing not to compromise the sound they had created.
Are you going to change much with your style of music in the pop world? No, we'll be an Australian sound. We'll definitely try to get our own sound. Not a Beatles sound, or a Rolling Stones sound.
It was a golden place and time to be in a band. A youth revolution was in play. All the world's talented musicians were heading there.
London seemed so great. You know, I could literally fall out of my door and go and see Ike Tina Turner. I think I was sweated on by Tina Turner.
The Easies had left Australia to mass hysteria. Now, they were nobodies.
There was hundreds of bands, all wanting a microphone. What can we contribute to all of this? How can we make ourselves so different?
And we did everything possible to sort of fit in fast and sort of, you know, and come up with a hit.
Ted flew in from Oz, and sessions began at Abbey Road. This was going to be their international breakthrough. But But for the first time, Ted and the Easy Beats didn't deliver a hit. United Artists thought the songs were way too simple, and they blamed Ted.
It was just a different game. It wasn't Australia anymore. You know, they were now trying to impress the world, and it was quite elusive trying to find the big hit that was needed.
The record company decided a new producer was the answer. So Ted flew home, and a new chapter began.
I imagine that would have been hard for him, because I think he was so inextricably intertwined with everything the Easy Beats had done, the surge, the energy, the sound of them.
But Ted wasn't the type to wallow in self-pity. Back in Sydney, his search for an Australian sound continued as he signed and recorded caveman rockers The Throb and The Missing Links.
So there was thumping and bassing.
Ted produced them into the charts.
I mean, we were arguably the first long-haired band in Australia. It wasn't, it wasn't that long, but we used to get chased out of suburbs with irate mobs.
To come out with Billy Thorpe as the first one, and The Missing Links and The Throb and the Easy Beats, how fantastic is that? You know, at a time when you're just starting something brand new.
Ted sent money to London, where the Easy Beats were being put through the ringer. They were told a more sophisticated sound was needed for the UK market, and Stevie Wright's lyrics were too naive. George had to tell his friend Stevie that he would no longer be writing songs with him, that it would be Harry Vander from now on.
We were expected to write a hit song. So Harry and I, we locked ourselves in this room for 3-4 months to write a hit song.
Hitmaker Shel Talmy, who worked with the Kinks and the Who, took over as producer.
George took his gear down and played all the tapes. And the guy came on, no. Have you got anything else? So George said, I've got this little riff I'm working on. 3, 4. Just a riff, nothing else. Went in, no lyrics, just a riff. And he went, I like that. Go away and finish it and bring it back. Let me hear it finish.
George and Harry were struggling to nail it, so they went to the pictures. The pre-feature was a short about an a cappella group called the Swingle Singers.
All this stuff. And George went, wow. Went back and asked where the doo-doos come from. George had nailed it.
Monday morning feels so bad. Everybody seems to nag.
Went back to see this guy and said, wait a minute. He went, beautiful, let's record it. We went in the studio a while after. We took one take. He went, right, next. When I was home, was that it? One take it was, and he done it.
Friday on My Mind was released on October 14th, 1966, along with 63 other singles that came out that same day.
She looks fine tonight. She's all the time to be.
The BBC initially overlooked it. Pirate radio stations championed it, where a good many Aussie DJs worked. Finally, through November, it started to climb the charts. They were to support the Four Tops, Cream, the Rolling Stones, and the frenzy began again.
The chicks went ballistic. This big woman ran out and she danced down on top of me. I said, I've got you down, but I don't know what to do with you. I said, well, think of something. I wasn't getting up. I said, no way I'm playing it. We brought the curtain down. People couldn't play, we brought the curtain down. Now, this is unbelievable. You know, this is England. This is not Australia, this is England.
Friday gave the Easy Beats around the world ticket to fame. On the jukebox rocks at Max's Kansas City, the coolest club in the world. Lou Reed played the easy beats every night.
It just fell together like a dream, you know, like it doesn't happen every day.
Everything about it is just brilliant. It was kind of their Bohemian Rhapsody.
Amidst the mayhem, George wrote to his brothers back home.
Dear Mal and Angus, we're having a pretty crazy time here. Great to hear that Friday has gone to #1 in Australia. It's top 20 in the good old USA, where we are now. It's meant our lives have been pretty wild.
News of George's success was music to Ted Albert's ears, but he was already laying plans for the next generation of Youngs. When he visited the family home one day, he heard something that caught his attention.
My father said, oh, they had to do record companies coming, you better all behave, you know, so he'd be very kind of quiet and, you know. And Ted was quite a tall man and we were all very small, so you were all kind of looking like this, you know. And he said, I heard some guitar playing. And my father said, oh, that's the two boys will be playing away and you know. So, and Ted said to my dad, if they ever want to do something, send them to me.
Have you heard the big news? Telly has. Scroll down, Cal. Never thought I'd see that. Netflix on Foxtel.
Now you can enjoy Foxtel and Netflix all in one place on IQ4. Just press the home button for all your favourite entertainment, drama and sport on one screen.
Wow. Ted wasn't just nurturing rock talent, he was also looking for pop. But he looked in different places. When a backhoe operator called Ted Mulry appeared with a guitar and a love song, he was welcomed to the family.
Ted Mulry wandered into Albert's off the back of his backhoe. He brought in his own song, Julia, which was a great success.
Julia went to #5 in the charts in 1969. The first of 7 top 10 singles Mulry would record with the Alberts. Back in London, the Easy Beats set their minds to what comes after Friday.
So now we're in a position to be internationally recognised, and now that this is so, we can start to write music that could set a trend.
Ted Albert dispatched the then 21-year-old budding filmmaker Peter Clifton to capture George and Harry's efforts for a follow-up hit.
I wanted drama, and when they started recording Heaven and Hell, and they did the high sweet note for heaven and the deep bass ugly note for hell, I could tell then on my handheld cameras, like by going one to the other, this was a perfect metaphor for rock and roll.
Excellent. Try and get more jangly effect. Very heavenish. It doesn't sound like heaven.
As they struggled to find a new popular sound, Clifton recorded the drama.
Try to make it sound beautiful, you know.
Their heart was in writing simple rock and roll R&B based songs, and the kind of classic mistake that most bands make is, as the rest of the world changes, you change your music. I mean, the Beatles are obviously becoming more complex, and so everyone, I guess, thought, well, maybe we should show that we can do the same thing.
Started to change our style. You know, we got more complicated, got far more diverse, you know, all that sort of stuff.
They tried everything from reggae to psychedelia, to what George later described as cornball schmaltz shit. trying to keep up the momentum of Friday on My Mind.
We gave him Hello, How Are You, which was like, you know, a soggy bloody ballad. By this time, nobody knew who the damn Easy Beats were, you know. And then there was Jimi Hendrix doing his thing and all that stuff, you know. We were toast.
Australian music's greatest band had been pulled in so many different directions and had been ripped off by so many promoters that they called it a day. It was time to come home.
Roll sound. Steve, how have things been in England over the last couple of years?
How do you mean, how have things been?
Well, since you were in Australia in '67, how's the group progressed since then?
Progressed?
Yeah.
Well, being in England, we've taken in a lot of influences. Alcohol.
As they started their last tour to pay off their debts, they released a song that showed everyone how brilliant they could be. Good times would become the motto for Albert's music in the decades to come. As the Easy Beats disbanded, Harry made sure the next generation would continue what they'd started, handing down his beloved Gretsch Firebird to George's younger brother, Malcolm.
It was a nice guitar, but I didn't use it a lot. And Mel, the bloody thing he was playing was falling apart, you know, it's terrible. I said, Jesus Christ. And then he was, you know, he was such a hot little player anyway, so I thought, well, he deserves a good guitar, you know. And so here it is. Best investment I ever made. What can I say? If I'd known it, I would have given him more than one.
Ted had his ear on the future too.
He gave Mal the tape recorder, and Mal would get like a couple of cardboard boxes and say, right, you just bang this when I tell you. So I'd have to try and tap along to go now, try and keep time for him. Yeah. So, you know, he used it well.